and Ayman Mohadeen, journalist for NBC News.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. It is a real honor and pleasure to be here with you guys. There is nothing like the power of sport in bringing the world together, and there are few events in the world that bring the world together across so many cultures, countries, religions, divides, like the World Cup. We are very privileged to have with us His Excellency Hassan al-Thawadi. He is the Secretary General for the Supreme Committee for the Delivery and Legacy. He is also chairman of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar 2022. And it is perhaps one of the most anticipated sporting events in our lifetime because it is the first time being held in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, if you will.
Absolutely.
There is a lot at stake here, and I want to begin with that point by asking you about the transformative impact that you anticipate this World Cup to have, both on Qatar internally and on the world externally.
No, absolutely. I mean, as you correctly pointed out, I think if you look, there's a lot of examples throughout history where major sporting events had transformational impact on host nations. I mean, if we look at, for example, South Africa in 2010, the World Cup, it came to the Rainbow Nation, but it wasn't one that was limited to South Africa. If you saw the African nation supporting Ghana, for example, when it qualified to the quarterfinals, you could see that there was a galvanization of national pride and continental pride behind it. If you look at the impact, for example, again, of Germany in 2006, aside from the fact that it had a transformational impact and a positive impact from a lot of people that we spoke to in terms of economic reformation, or at least economic activity, there was, to a large extent, a sense of healing between the West and East German reunification that the World Cup in Germany actually brought together. And from every person that we've spoken to, you could see that the one moment that truly brought Germany together was the World Cup in Germany in 2006. So there's many different examples of the powerful impact that sports has. Now, in a region that is passionate about sports and yet completely misunderstood, in a region that has a growing younger generation coming into the workforce that is severely misunderstood from the outside world, and also in a region that looks towards the need for, let's call it a brighter future, brighter opportunities, brighter options developed. There is no event today that is out there that has that potential, transformative potential, like the first World Cup in the Middle East, in Qatar. And we're doing the best. From day one, when we bid in 2010, we always committed to the fact that this was not a World Cup for Qatar. This was a World Cup for the Middle East, by the Middle East. And we've been working very hard since then towards delivering the positive impact of this tournament beyond the borders of Qatar, and that's our measure of success.
Let's hone in a little bit on some of the potential changes internally within Qatar. You certainly talked a lot about how Qatar can change the perception, maybe some of the stereotypes that the world has of the region. How is Qatar, how is the Supreme Committee, how is the World Cup using this opportunity to push forward some changes internally within the region, within Qatar?
Well, let's take it step by step. So, we've kind of broken down, if you will, our legacy goals into more or less 4 different goals that correlate to the 2030 national vision of the country, which is economic diversification, environmental sustainability, human development, and social development. And we've worked very hard towards ensuring that each one of these pillars is fulfilled, or the World Cup acts as a catalyst to accelerate initiatives that will fulfill one of these pillars, both locally within Qatar and regionally. So when we're looking at, for example, the first one is economic diversification. The country is committed towards ensuring that we create, we diversify from being a hydrocarbon industry. That meant looking at the sporting industry and the fact that today, if you look at Europe, if you look at the US, the sporting industry directly or indirectly contributes towards the GDP, towards job creations and so on, and innovation. And this is exactly what we're looking for the World Cup to do. So, you're looking at the technologies that are the cooling technology that's being developed within the stadiums. This has an impact on outside activities, on manufacturing activities, and so on. So there's a lot of initiatives that are being undertaken over there. One of the initiatives that we've launched is an initiative called Challenge 22. It's a regional initiative. We go out to the region for young startup companies. We offer them opportunities to provide solutions to the World Cup for fan experience, for event experience. The winners or the people that come on board, we provide them financial support, and we provide them the opportunity to be part of our procurement process, which hopefully then will lead that to being a platform that will launch them into either a regional market or a global market. If you look at, for example, one of the elements that we're very proud of, where we believe we've left a very positive impact and a tangible impact, is on the social side, which is in relation to worker welfare reforms. Now, the country before 2010 was committed to worker welfare reforms. Needless to say, however, it wasn't to the extent that we were very proud of. I mean, there was a lot of issues that were out there. When the spotlight came, of course, and we always knew that the spotlight would serve as a catalyst to accelerating these reforms. Now, since then, the country, through cooperation with international organizations, has made extensive progress when it comes to worker welfare reforms, when it came to health and safety standards on the sites. But, of course, there's still more work to be done. Now, when you look at the work that the Supreme Committee has done, and I know our organization sounds like a cult, but it's not. On worker welfare reforms, what we've done, for example, one element that we're very proud of is on the recruitment fee side. This is an epidemic that I think a lot of migrant workers suffer from. Most migrant workers, when they leave their countries, go to other countries, the criminal organizations usually blackmail them or force them to pay recruitment fees, illegal recruitment fees, for them to be able to leave their country and go to another country and actually find a job and care for their families. One of the problems that we face, and we've been talking to international organizations, is how do you resolve this situation? Because the receiving countries usually, the burden of proof is usually on the worker to prove that they paid these fees. Now, usually there's no paper trail for this. So what we did within the Supreme Committee is we actually flipped the burden of proof. We've coordinated and cooperated with a lot of companies, major contractors, who've willingly joined into this program. And now the burden of proof is flipped on the other side. So if a worker claims that they paid recruitment fees, these companies that have opted in, willingly opted in, would actually pay the recruitment fees to the worker, regardless of any proof, unless then they can prove that they didn't pay, which is an extent, it's a significant step in the fight against these illegal practices. We're going to, I think by 2021, we're set to contribute or reimburse around $20 million to workers, about 17,000 workers. And half of these workers are not working on World Cup projects. I think it's important to point this out. A lot of the contractors that saw the success of this program opted in and brought in workers not working on our sites into this program as well. So, I mean, this is kind of another example of where the World Cup has a knock-on effect beyond World Cup projects.
So to that point, obviously when you host an event like this, both the country and the committee become under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. You've certainly addressed some of the criticism that has been levied against both the state and the World Cup in terms of its labor rights practices. And I just want to talk a little bit about that for a moment, because as you mentioned, international human rights organizations have criticized the pace of reform in some of these issues. Obviously, the systems that you talked about, whether it's the kafala system and some of the other issues. One, do you feel that the World Cup Committee has made enough strides to address some of these concerns, or what more needs to be done? And two, give us the macro picture in terms of how the state of Qatar is doing on that front as well.
I think to start off with, the simple answer is, there's always more to be done. When it comes to worker welfare reforms, I don't think any nation today can make the claim that they've done enough. There are nations that are very well advanced, no doubts, but I don't think any nation can make the claim that they've done enough when it comes to worker welfare reforms. There's no doubts that from our side, as you said, we've received criticism, and we welcome these criticisms, especially when it's constructive criticism in relation, whether it's to the pace or to the extent of reforms that are being done. But we've always, at least within the committee, I'll speak first on behalf of the committee, and then I'll briefly touch upon the state's aspects. We've always said that, for these changes to be sustainable, for them to remain beyond the World Cup, to go beyond the time when the spotlight, moves away from us to another nation, it has to be done right. It has to be done with enough depth. It has to be done with enough consideration to make sure it remains. And that was always our goal. Our goal was always to make sure that, the beneficiaries are the workers themselves, and it is something that is done in the right way. So obviously, from our side and within the committee, we've implemented worker welfare reforms to ensure that workers' voices are heard. This is now being implemented by the state as well. Now you've got worker welfare forums where workers can raise their concern without any fear of retaliation or any concerns. We've implemented medical checkups, annual medical checkups now to all the workers being on our sites as well. We've implemented within the Supreme Committee we've implemented TPP-1 system, which is a integrated electronic health medical checkup system that's being utilized within the AHS in the UK to kind of unify and centralize the medical records of all the workers. To a lot, to a lot, this might seem like it's not enough, but it's significant steps from where we were.
Right.
And there's of course more work to be done. Now, when it comes to the state, I think the first thing is the kafala system, which got abolished, which I think is a very significant step, in the sense that it required legislative and social change as well to happen, and that today is successfully being implemented. Minimum wage is being introduced. I know there's discussions as to whether it's enough or not, but now it's being revised. The first step was introduction of the minimum wage. Now the question is, how do you revise it and make it to an extent that it's acceptable? And now this is being revised as well. So like I said, steps are being made. Is it enough?
Right.
I will never claim that it's enough. And plain and simply, no, it isn't. There's more to be done.
Let's talk about another important issue that has captured the attention of the world, and that is the issue of climate change, the issue of sustainability. The World Cup being held in Qatar poses all kinds of challenges in terms of air conditioning of the stadiums, the way the stadiums are being built. And I want to talk a little bit about the sustainability, because we had millions of people protesting around the world recently, demanding that governments and companies take climate change very seriously. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing at the World Cup to try and align the World Cup with what is becoming an increasingly urgent need, that everything we build brand new is sustainable in some capacity.
Absolutely. This takes us to the third pillar of the national vision, which was environmental sustainability. It's something that the state of Qatar has been committed to for many years. When it comes to our World Cup, I think one element to point out, we're a small country, so what we offered was a compact World Cup. The concept of a compact World Cup is you have stadiums next to each other, no more than an hour away. Now, the previous models of the tournaments, if you look at, for example, Brazil, South Africa, and Russia in particular, it meant that countries would be playing in one city, then they and their supporters would travel from that city in whatever mode of travel to a different city and play another group stage over there, and then constantly, continuously be traveling around. Now, obviously, that leaves a significant and extensive carbon footprint. In the World Cup in Qatar, that's eliminated. Just because of the compact nature of the World Cup, it means your carbon footprint, generally speaking, in terms of transportation, is reduced. That's one element initially. The other aspect, of course, from our side is what we've offered is we've committed with the power producer in the country to develop a 100 megawatt solar farm. Now, the concept of this is the solar farm will be feeding into the network. We're developing more and more initiatives that actually is reliant on solar energy that would feed into the network and would balance out the carbon footprint that the tournament would leave. Now, our commitment overall is that this is the first carbon neutral tournament. It's something that His Highness just recently reiterated as well. And again, even if we look in terms of the way the construction and the operation of the stadiums is, it's reliant on a system or a method called GSAS. It's a standard of construction and operation that's been developed in the region that looks towards sporting facilities in terms of sustainability within the sporting facilities. It's the same as LEED and the other construction standards, but it is more specifically focused on sporting facilities. That's now been utilized and been adopted by FIFA.
And let me ask you, it's hard, as you mentioned a little bit, when you talk about sports, to not talk about politics. The timing of the World Cup finds the GCC and the countries of the Gulf divided. Qatar is under a current blockade from neighboring countries. Talk to us a little bit about how you envision the World Cup possibly being a gateway or a conduit to bringing the region together. I mean, is it possible between now and 2022 the World Cup brings the GCC together?
I think it's important to point out one thing. Leave aside the politics. Politically, yes, there are these issues, and my country currently is suffering from an illegal blockade. But if you look at it from a people's point of view, from the populace, the region is together, and they are in support of the World Cup. We've opened up, one example is we opened up a volunteering system, a registration form for people within the region. We have today, we've gone over the 200,000 mark for people from within the entire Arab world that have expressed an interest in being volunteers. Now, out of these 200,000 people, we've had about 3 events. We've got about over 2,000 people that have joined us from within the region. Some of them have come from the blockading states to participate as volunteers in the programs. The Challenge 22 initiative that I've mentioned today, a lot of them are coming from the region. A lot of people have participated from the region as well. The purpose of this tournament, and we've always been very, very careful to ensure that we separate politics from sports, because sport really is a unifying platform. And every element, every initiative that we've taken, every step that we've taken has constantly reaffirmed and confirmed to us that the people are looking towards this event as a unifying event. One last example that I'd like to mention is when we launched our logo a couple of weeks ago. We went to about 8 or 9 Arab nations. We projected the logo onto some of their iconic buildings. And the support and the reaction from the people, again, I'm leaving aside ideologies, I'm leaving aside political differences, from the people was reinvigorating. And a significant portion of them came also from the blockading nations. So I think, it confirms again the vision that we've always taken as a nation. Sports is a platform to unify people. I think, generally speaking, the nation always committed to the fact that, you resolve conflict through dialogue. And sports as a unifying platform, there's nothing more powerful than that.
Let me get your final thoughts, if I can, on 2 issues before I get to the legacy. But I think a lot of folks here in the U.S. in particular will be watching this and saying, what is Qatar doing to make sure that the World Cup is inclusive to all people from all walks of life, including members of the LGBT community who may have reservations and concerns about coming to the region and participating or attending a World Cup?
Look, we've said it from the very beginning. This is a World Cup and everybody's welcome. This is a football tournament, this is a sporting tournament, and everybody is welcome. From all walks of life, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your background, whatever your political affiliation as well, because I know the question of Israel seems to come up also quite a bit, and everybody's welcome. The whole purpose is, this is an inclusive tournament. And the fact that it's for the first time being held in an Arab, Middle Eastern, Islamic country is a great opportunity, because the reality is we don't all of us share the same point of view or perspective in terms of ways of life. But that difference should not be a factor that separates us. It should be a factor that all of us appreciate the differences between each other, appreciate that there might be some differences in the walks of life or how we see things, but nevertheless, our humanity is the commonality between us. Everybody's welcome. People from all walks of life have always consistently come to Qatar, and they've felt safe. This is a welcoming nation. And it is a welcoming tournament. And I'd like to tell everybody that might have certain reservations, please, from now till 2022, we've got 2 Club World Cups we're hosting by the end of this year and by the end of next year. Please come and join us. And you'll see what I'm talking about. It's on the ground. The proof is on the ground.
What do you, final question, what do you want the legacy of the World Cup to be?
Oof. You see, when you call the organization Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy, it's not a simple answer. I can see they're saying, please wrap up in a moment. I don't know if I can wrap up in a moment with that, but let me just put it simply as this. Look, we've always said it's a unifying platform. For me, the measure of success would be in 2025, 2026, when you look at a family, when you look at a young girl, a young boy who has somehow benefited directly or indirectly from the World Cup. We've launched initiatives using football for development like Generation Amazing. We've launched initiatives on worker welfare reforms, as I said, that actually has far-reaching impact beyond just the welfare of construction workers, but also how they can contribute to their families back home. So for me, the measure of success is finding individuals that that this tournament has bettered their lives one way or the other.
Hassan, thank you very much. We wish you continued success. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.